Kevin, yeah, because it's just the three of us. It's just the three of us on this committee, right? Besides
Yeah,
Kevin.
sounds good. So I've started recording, so we're all good, and I can share that with him as well. Okay, so he can't say anything mean about
Good.
Kevin. Okay, no, just kidding.
I should have done that.
Oh, yeah?
Okay, so then also just quickly going over the agenda again, the lion's share of our chat today would be about the scope of our committee or subcommittee, whatever we're calling it. You know, taking stock of the issues that have been put forward so far. Sharon, you may have pondered them a little bit in the last couple of weeks and thought, there's some other things I want to raise. And also, you know, what then is really the scope of our work as a subcommittee, and you know, what sections of the charter should we be, you know, honing in on given the nature of these concepts, justice and equity. And then you know, quick chat about background reading that we know we need to be delving into, if we haven't already started to. And then next steps, you know, in terms of, I'm quite curious about what an indicative timeline is meant to be for the work of all of the subcommittees. And you know, what you know, and we haven't talked about that yet as a full commission. So I just thought we might want to put our thoughts into that once we've talked about scope and issues, and just have some notion of that. Do we want to report anything on Wednesday? Will there be time, you know, for us to share any information from this meeting? And then also, what do we want to delve into the next time we meet? So that's kind of what I laid out, if that makes sense.
Good.
I like it.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, so do we want to just start off by just sharing with each other, you know, why we feel justice and equity are important considerations as part of a review of this important charter? I thought maybe that would be good to get to know each other's you know, frames coming into this a bit.
Agreed.
Anybody want to start? I don't mind starting if somebody else.
Either one of you, please go ahead. I'll speak last.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Okay, this is a big subject, and I think we probably have some good guidelines that already exist, and probably right there in the King County Charter, we can pull some really good stuff out. Because I know Seattle has definitely had its problems. You know, it's supposedly very, you know, liberal-minded or progressive-minded even place, but there's still a lot of discrimination. There has been a lot of discrimination there, and a lot of people feel like it's kind of doesn't live up to its reputation or its myth of what it wants to think it is. So I think that, you know, that's kind of instructive that, wow, Seattle's that way. And we know we have a very small population of people of color in the San Juans. And frankly, when I moved here from New York City 20 years ago, I was like, is there a problem here? You know, because it's pretty darn white. But that said, we do have some people of color. And for a very long time, they seem to not be getting harassed or discriminated against, but I think it would be good to talk with them too. I know one young woman who is a friend of mine who is not living on Orcas right now, but she has lived on Orcas for a long time. And she actually had problems, and I was just floored because she's this really beautiful, vital young woman, and I could not believe that she was suffering from racial problems here. And I don't think it's a general problem with the general population, but things will happen here and there. Another friend of mine on Orcas had, you know, her kids were being harassed in school. And I'm like, this is not okay. And I said, do you want me to jump in and do something? She said, no, it's okay. But, you know, I would have jumped in a second. So things go on and we may not hear about them. People may just be kind of holding it close. I know I've been holding Martin Luther King Day events here on Orcas for the last 15 years or so. I organize them because I want to do them for myself. I think it's important that we have a real, you know, a recognition of why we have that holiday. So I do it. And my friends of color generally do not come. And I haven't asked them why. I don't want to put them on the spot, but my guess is that maybe they just don't want to be looked at or singled out in a situation, you know, so I haven't pressed them on it. But the one other thing I want to just bring up, well, a couple of things that I'm concerned about. We have more people of color on the island now. And I think
Okay.
that's a really good thing. But I want to, how do we check in with them? How do we make sure that they're doing okay? And how do we, the anti-racism stuff that's been going on in the county, is it completely productive, or is it to some degree counterproductive? I don't know what we could, I'm not saying we should legislate that, but I think it's a good conversation to have. It's like, how do we know if we're really being inclusive, or how do we know if we're making people feel uncomfortable? I think that's some of the stuff we want to explore. Gosh, there was one more thing. Oh yes, when I planned a Black Lives Matter march here on Orcas like 5 years ago when we first had one, and I called the sheriff's office to say, we're going to be having this march, and I just want to make sure that we're doing everything the proper way. And the deputy that I spoke to said to me, all lives matter. And that was an opportunity for me to explain to him why we are specifically saying Black Lives Matter. Yes, of course, all lives matter, but there's a reason why we are specifically pointing out that Black Lives Matter. And I shouldn't have had to explain it to a deputy, here in San Juan County. So I don't know if there's any educating going on there. And that's a place I think we might have some impact. And I do want to see, I mean, is it okay to invite people that we know that are, of whatever cultural background that we might think might have any problems? I know I had an Asian-looking friend here on the island who had some real problems when after COVID broke out, because everybody started blaming China. So anybody living in San Juan County or anywhere who looked like they come from an Asian, family background was really kind of very vulnerable. No matter how long they've been living here. I know I have friends who, from the Orient, whose family came over here way before my family did,
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Well, Sharon, that really helps get a sense of your perspective on some things that you care about and that you want to have discussion around and think around, and it touches a little bit on who might we want to talk to, and get some insight from, etc. And it also, I think we are going to have a 101 presentation by the county manager on Wednesday, which could be an opportunity to ask a couple questions, or maybe we field some questions from him at another point in time that would help us get a better grasp on how the county works around some of these issues, education and awareness and a handling of complaints, etc., and experiences. So, no, that's excellent. No, that's great. That's great. Thank you. Are we okay if we move to Kyle?
yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks for that, Sharon. I guess I can leave myself off mute now. That's such a luxury.
I know.
Such a small group. I know that when we did the introductions, I didn't really share a whole lot with the group about what I do, I mean, other than paramedicine. So a lot of my current work is in chronic care management for senior citizens or for the aging population in the county. And that's a separate job from the EMS work. I sit on the County Board of Health. I'm not sure if I shared that or not. And so equity and justice for me stems in part from social services rendered by the county. And, the fact that you've seen a lot of the kind of the repeat theme initially was about Native representation and sort of a nod to sort of the tribal history of the islands. And that's, I find it very interesting, sad and interesting that as a medical provider, that most of the services that are done by or provided by minority groups or people of color are available out of San Juan County. There are very few that I can think of that have any sort of origin here, let alone offices that you could, go see or walk into, or somebody you could call for that matter. And so most of what most of where I come from is kind of my personality, everything non-work about, the fact that we have, arguably a few hundred years, if that, of history of, white presence in the archipelago here, and in every sort of flavor. We barely acknowledge the fact that this is such a rich cultural and historical, place for the native tribes, and they're not. I just wrote some notes. Maybe we all know. I know quite a few people who are descendants of some of the local tribes, and that's sort of a quality of anonymity. There isn't a lot of celebration of that. It's sort of, I think it's overly problematic to talk about that part. And a lot of people have expressed, a lot of folks from that history have expressed just concern that there's no appreciation of that history, but there's also, there's some risk because of whether it's fishing rights or whaling or, just how there's been very little conversation. There's very little written record here that expresses the change from native population time to Spanish and European explorers and all the place names. So many of those pieces that are that don't reflect or don't acknowledge that prehistory. So a lot of that for me is trying to figure out, and it's true on a native level, it's true on anything, anyone, anywhere, anything non-white is not represented in the county government externally in any place. Now I think of the last year and a half or something, when the county council begins a meeting, there is an expression of the I forget what it's called, but an acknowledgement that we live in the ancestral home of native populations, and that's acknowledged in the business of the county. I'm not sure that's really true. I mean, that's a verbal acknowledgement, but I want to explore on this committee more about how in county structure. And I appreciated this comment. I think it came from the prosecuting attorney. It's not a content group. This is a structural group, but how can we change or modify structure to make, certainly to recognize the populations that are here, but to actually, I don't want to be, I'll do the work, but it's not my job to be the conduit. I think people need representation in the county and at the county level, and need to be able to.
Yeah. Oops.
Circle back in the medical side,
Hey, Kyle, are you there?
Here, she's coming back.
Sorry, I just
There you are.
disappeared.
We lost her for a second.
Okay.
That happens to me during our big meetings in like 20-second increments.
Sorry. Yeah. So you were just talking about, recognizing that we are not looking at the, content of what the local government can do, but looking at the structural changes that could be. Yeah. So I heard you saying, that what can we contemplate in terms of how the local government represents, minority population groupings within this county.
And what I had just added is, it's not just a cultural or question of origin. It's also for questions of gender, and I'm delighted. I think I said this before. Delighted that 2/3 of the county council is female now, and I just the impact that might have in a cycle will be interesting. But this is a real opportunity, along with climate, and this is a notably missing component of government everywhere, and civil and civic services and civil government everywhere, but particularly here where we are overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly have this beautiful history that that doesn't reflect in the ways that it needs to. So, you know, there's also a strong to Sharon's sort of thought about Asian populations. There's an amazing Chinese history on this island. There's a Hawaiian history in all of the Gulf Islands and the northern San Juans, and it's all relegated to books. And one of the things that I was advocating for, I think it's a stretch, one for cost to the county and one for how to populate it. But I'd like to explore an office sort of we're a national boundary and an international boundary. And I know that, you know, Jamie Stevens and some other historical council members have done maybe a trip over to the, you know, a Sydney counterpart and done some of that transboundary work, but there's so much of that is untapped and unexplored. So that's a long-winded.
No,
and, you know, to the point, I think, you know, where this falls, some of this is probably brand new charter chapters, and some of it is administration, and some of it is probably, it's public interest, but not in initiative or referendum. It's really, you know, there's a whole part, and I think we'll find too with preamble and how we identify ourselves or what we want to say about our identity, collective identity, is not just at the beginning, but threaded in key ways through the document. So
absolutely.
that's a lot. I mean, to make that, you know, to push that back to the voters in, you know, 9 or 12 months is, you know, some of this does end up being content, but and it's not a spin. It's very much it's a critical flavor change that I think I'd like us to your points, Jane, about, you know, just the language we use and how we explain. Some of it's generational, certainly, but how we describe ourselves is pretty flawed. So.
Yeah. Well, listen, that's also excellent. I mean, I think we're doing some context setting here today in this meeting, so I think let's just continue with that and ease into the issues as we have time. I guess I'll just sort of introduce why I'm interested in these themes. Really, it has everything to do with you know, my background and also my professional work. And I introduced myself as someone who's, you know, grown up predominantly in Canada, but had an international career in my work, working on both issues of gender equality, but also issues of local governance and human rights, and equity and equality, and so on and so forth. And so what I'm really appreciating listening to you, both of you, is your very, you know, your very longer standing contextualizations of what you observe and experience, perhaps to some extent through others, through your professions, you know, through your day-to-day lived experiences on these islands, because you're of here longer than I am, apart from myself being, you know, really a part-timer for 40 years now. You know, I've brought my family here 3 years ago full-time. And so I am in love with this place also because of its proximity to Canada. And I grew up predominantly in British Columbia, and have dual citizenship, obviously. And so I see and experience and feel here on Lopez a very progressive group of people on this island, a very progressive part of our population on this island that really, really pushes the boundaries in terms of issues of anti-racism, of various races, of wanting to reach out to disenfranchised segments of the population. Our Lopez Island Family Resource Center puts a lot of effort into that kind of bridge building within our community, and constantly seeking out ways to do some of that work around inclusion and awareness raising and education. But there's so much more we could do. And what you were speaking to, Sharon, about there being, you know, absolutely members of our population that feel excluded, that, you know, we have far too many homeless people on this island. To what extent do our social services serve people in a manner that's respectful, dignified, and so on and so forth. And then there's the whole issue of just, you know, your gender diverse population. You know, you have young people who have diverse gender identities that feel very excluded in this place. Some even leave the islands because they can't fit in any way. Then there's the whole, Mexican population, et cetera, et cetera. So I come here, and having myself worked on issues of gender equality my entire life, having had feminist role models as parents, having had a Black adopted brother, raised in a white family, and very, very exposed to issues of racism and targeting by police and authorities, that my brother's experienced all his life. Having had two parents who were involved in the civil rights movement in the United States and marched on Washington when Martin Luther King spoke. I mean, I've just got infused in me the power and importance of inclusion and diversity, and how meaningful that can be to society and community. And so I'm just passionate about this stuff. And something else I feel and experience, as I'm learning more about San Juan County, learning more about the United States, living here, because it's a very culturally jarring experience having moved here now full time. I'm just seeing that we are watching a couple generations behind us now realize that some of this stuff doesn't matter to them. In other words, they want to live diverse lives. They want to be open and accepting. And these are younger people and younger generations. And my daughter, being just turned 14, she's like, she doesn't understand, gender inequality in a way that's hit her yet, because she hasn't grown up far enough yet. But she's not bothered by issues of gender identity and so on and so forth. I mean, and many of her peers aren't either, and so there's such interesting things intergenerationally that are happening in our lives right now. And what I feel the world is calling for us to do is be diverse and accepting, and it's showing that to be exclusionary and to be afraid and not embracing of one another's diversity is not healthy, and it's not helpful. And so I just think we have a responsibility as forward-looking people to respect what's coming behind us in the way of generations coming up, and be open to, like you say, Kyle, learning about the history of this place and the uniqueness of this county, and helping us to all be, to be open to embracing diversity and not be scared of it. And so, yeah, so anyway, that's kind of where I come from personally. And I'm going to say a mea culpa on this, but I'm just very new to this county's government. I'm new to the culture of this county. I'm learning so much every day, in a way, if you will. And so what I bring, I guess, to the table is the depth of my knowledge working on these issues, and in international contexts, in countries as diverse as Afghanistan and Pakistan. I mentioned this before, living in Indonesia and Cambodia. So I've done this work cross-culturally, and it's very sensitive work, and it's hard work. But to your point, Kyle, we're not going to transform things overnight. We're planting seeds for the future. That's the way I look at it, and they can be small seeds, but they can be very powerful seeds. So I'll just finish there.
Okay. I would say to that, Jane, I think, one of the things that comes up over and over again, I have, I'm 49, my wife is 63. So I have daughters on the island and grandkids by marriage, which is, there's nothing really better than that.
Me too.
But one of the pieces that ties in, it's not a piece, it's a fundamental dysfunction here. The government, not just the government, but the delivery of county services, which is really what we have here. I mean, there's Friday Harbor government, but generally speaking, it's a county for the county. Mm-hmm. There's a giant missing piece in youth is too general a term, but the county workforce is, a lot of the attrition to kind of lower the county burden for just general services in the budget is to just not replace people when they retire. So with a few exceptions, generally the county is just getting older and older. The county government is just getting older. And so in some places where these folks that you mentioned a little bit, Jane, they have and not only an avenue through, programming in school, they can be excited. Clearly Olivia is excited to participate. And that's something that is she's rare in that interest, and the opportunity is even more rare in this county. And I think that the gaps or the shift in generational values would be, so I guess to your point about we're not going to change things overnight, more here than most places I've ever lived before. There's an opportunity to have fundamental impact at that level, and to just, I mean, if you want something changed, then wait your turn until you have an option to be elected or appointed to a civic board, and you have a seat at the table. Where in a lot of places, especially progressive sort of Western Washington, Western Oregon, there is a lot of effort, a lot of intent, I think, to be more progressive, but it's really challenging. If you run for office, you're one of, tens of thousands, whereas here, a single person has a lot more, and the opportunity for a single person or a small group goes much, much further. So that's a piece, I think, it's an opportunity right now to take advantage of that, and to the seeds that go into the document or go into the intent of the charter are probably the best ones are just seeds that crack a door open and hold the door open for a spot.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Sharon.
Just getting what Kyle is saying is just getting me thinking now that yes, I really am. I'm feeling very dedicated to getting more people involved, and certainly young people and people of color here in the county. The thing that's a little bit daunting to me, and I need to delve more into this, and maybe that's something that we want to do as a committee too, and I'm certainly very willing to do that, is why aren't more people of color in this county stepping up for certain kinds of things? For example, I'm a member of the San Juan County Democrats, and we were working on our platform earlier this year. It's a very progressive platform, and we were trying to put some language in there for Black Lives Matter, for equity and social justice. But we didn't have anybody on our committee who was a person of color. We're all white, and so I went and I asked some of my friends, who are not part of the Democrats, and I said, what do you think of this language? Do you think this is good? Would you change anything? Would you add anything? And one friend of mine came back to me and said, well, how come there's not a person of color on your committee? And I said, well, that's a very legitimate question. I said, would you be willing to join our group? And she's like, no, I'm too busy. So, but it's, yes, I mean, we're all busy, but is there some other reason? I mean, is there something going on that makes people feel like they don't really belong? They're not really going to be accepted. People are going to say, oh, we're so accepting, but then somebody says something that's a little off, Is there a reason why people, just because of past experience, are hesitant to step up, to join a group, to give input, to run for the Charter Review Commission or whatever?
Yeah.
So how can we create a safe space for people to share anything about that might be uncomfortable?
So are you
and
talking?
I know my friend who told me she's very busy. She is very busy. I'm not saying that she's not busy. She is.
Yeah. Are you speaking about having them speak to us as a committee, or are you talking about more generally, sort of speaking to?
I would love it if they would. I would love to invite them and see if they would. I mean, I didn't. I want to know how we as a committee feel about that.
Sure.
But I would certainly love to do that.
Okay, well, let's keep that in mind as something, because one of the things I was asking you guys in terms of on this agenda was, when we're talking about meeting format, right, is invitation to other commissioners to join. By the way, just as a parenthesis, I would say I'm a bit disappointed that no other commissioners were interested in this group, to say the least, a little bit. And I think it speaks a little bit to the generational dimension of our group, but that's okay. It's not, I think we're going to be pushing their envelope quite a bit, and I don't know how comfortable that's going to be for them. And to me, my cynical side says they didn't participate in this because they don't think it's important. But nevertheless, we are obligated, I think, to share with them why it's important. So I think that's part of our challenge.
Can I speak to that for a sec?
Sure,
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Um, I don't know whether that's really accurate or not. I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
And it is certainly might be. But I would also say that it was hard to pick which committees to be on because so many of us wanted to be on so many committees. And I think it's very likely that a lot of the older population in particular feels maybe somewhat intimidated, like this is out of their league.
Okay.
I don't mean to make excuses for
knows?
them because
Yeah.
I'm just conjecturing on that.
Yeah.
I would say I'd say this in open court. I've been surprised knowing, having been here for 26 years and knowing some of the players personally, the input and the back and forth has been a lot less polar than I thought it would be, and a lot more forward thinking, and a lot more. I don't see anyone really sort of like recoiling and wanting to stand in the corner as their one key topic gets worked through and otherwise being uninvested. So I'm encouraged by that.
Excellent.
And I'll just say for my point, I'm not suggesting that either of you are. I have less interest in sort of foisting an agenda and more wanting to create a space and an opportunity inside county governance where people who are interested can not only can move forward or fill in, but are not specifically incentivized, but we re-identify, and it makes people want to be part of, be included and then be part of the forward motion, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how you do that, and we don't have to decide that today, but I struggle personally with, who do I go to as the representative for this key underrepresented population? I don't know. That's got its own weight, I think.
For sure.
I need to work out my own stuff on that too, but it's challenging.
For sure. I think I can tell you for sure that on Lopez, I know some folks who might be able to help us with that. Okay. And because that space that they play in all the time, and they have a lot of experience in that kind of thing, even if they're white, they can they can guide on how to bring other voices to bear. So I'm heartened by what I know exists here on Lopez. And I think we want to be thinking about, as we work together in the next while, when and how do we want to bring in some other views and some voices, as you were talking about, Sharon. So I think that's great. And I'll just share with you though, from my own experience, both talking with my brother about this kind of thing throughout his life, and talking also with women in countries where they don't have voices, they're not allowed to have voices, so to speak, etc. It is not easy to step in. It is not easy to step in, lean in, step forward, and claim a space at a table. It's extremely difficult and requires a tremendous amount of personal empowerment. And it may involve having to overcome personal trauma or existing trauma, be it in the past or the current or what have you. And so it's my brother has opted not, to engage often because he doesn't want to put himself out there, in terms of, being an advocate and standing on the front line. And it's just not in my brother's personality. And, and so I don't fault him for that. And the same thing is when I've worked with women in developing countries where they don't exercise the rights and freedoms that by law they know they have. It's because of all manner of different cultural reasons, So this is why I say, in my experience, we're talking seed planting here. Fortunately, however, in this big country, there is lots of valuable lessons to be drawn on. And I think if we can tap into a couple of those kinds of resources, even within our county, to get some good thinking on, and then we can work with Randy to say, what scope do we have really as commissioners to do any seed planting vis-a-vis the structure of the government and what could be done. So, yeah, anyway,
Yeah.
just a couple other thoughts there.
I was concerned by what happened on Lopez with the Black Lives Matter sign
Mm,
and the people that defaced that sign. And of course, there was a lot of backlash against the people who defaced the sign. But this is exactly why I think we need to have some education from people that are really skilled at communicating, about why we are putting up these signs. And it's not meant to, it can really be threatening to some people. And I
Oh,
think
yeah.
it's important to realize that how we approach justice and equity is very, very important. And not just
Absolutely.
that we approach it, but how we approach it. Like I've had some things happen where some I've just watched how some white people have gone off on some other white people in ways that you're just going to create more resentment and pushback. You're not going to bring these people into the fold with the way you're shaming and blaming and
For
all
sure.
of that.
For
And
sure.
I've had occasion, I've taken a couple of trainings, online trainings with a couple of different Black women facilitators on racial equity trainings, and they have done a phenomenal job. I mean, really excellent job, and everybody feels safe.
Hmm. Hmm.
You know, you've got people of color, you've got white people, and it's a safe space for everybody to share, and not saying like, well, you're white, so you're centering too much, or whatever it is. You're drawing too much attention to yourself, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a skill.
Yeah. For
I'd
sure.
like to hear Sharon more, maybe not right now, probably not right now for time, but I feel like that in my own thoughts, I feel like there are at least two battles. One is how to make San Juan County more accepting, more inclusive, how to change and educate behaviors. And it's not necessarily a separate, but how does that get instilled into county governance
Hmm.
in a way? I mean, certainly everyone, I'm sure, from a human resources perspective and from an equity perspective, just offering some of the classes you're talking about to county general staff and to electeds like deputies and the sheriff would,
Right.
would really potentially make some of those inroads that you're talking about. I don't see, and help me if I'm wrong, I don't see a way as a charter commissioner to do that kind of work unless we build in the kind of bandwidth or hands-on staffing or department that would be. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is challenging us, at least in this nation. We have intention, we have groups that feel one way, groups that feel other ways, but we don't have or I don't think of like which federal department would be tasked with encouraging improved race relations, or I mean anything like we're talking about. Is it the Justice Department's job? Is it human resources?
Yeah.
Is it just our elected leaders and their television time that's supposed to do it? We
Yeah.
don't do a good job on that
Again,
level.
I don't think it's any one department.
No,
Right.
good point. Good point. But then that lifting all boats is, and not that we shouldn't work on it, but it's so much bigger of a job that way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how to affect that on a countywide scale.
It's a good point in terms of thinking about a point of entry. And my experience here on the island was something that blew up at our school, in our secondary school in the last, well, not just actually in the whole of Lopez school in the last year and a half, was the whole issue of sexual harassment. Now, what ended up happening as the issue became resolved was that the district committed to hiring, with I think financed by their insurance company, hiring a consultant who would provide sexual harassment training that was greater and deeper and more one-on-one than what the state's online training requires of staff in the district. So the state requires that all staff complete annually an anti-sexual harassment training. But because of this whole incident blowing up, the district, the school board with the district decided that we absolutely have to hire a consultant to do really in-depth training of the staff of the school on anti-sexual harassment. And so, so in other words, the state has some role to play in terms of how it filters into different, the functioning, the administration of what happens in municipalities or counties vis-a-vis education and awareness around some key things like anti-racism, anti-sexism, et cetera. But to some extent, it will also then be the responsibility of that government entity, that local government entity, to take that on too. So it's an interesting thing to learn. We need to learn a little bit about that and find out. I think, again, to your point, Sharon, King County may have some instructive lessons for us there. And we're going to hear from them, from two, I think, commissioners, but two people involved in the recent review of their charter. And so we may want to do some follow-up with one or two of the people who were involved in looking at that whole justice and equity lens that they tackled, and getting some insight into that. So just a further thought there. Well, listen, guys, I'm conscious of just what do we want to try and capture off before, or cover off before we close today, because I don't want to abuse your time. But I mean, I think I've gotten a lot out of listening to you guys in terms of your sharing of where you're coming from. It's been very helpful for me. And I think that gives us a better sense where we're all coming from. In terms of just, if I could touch on briefly the meeting format, and how formal or informal. I mean, I understand it sounds like Tony Gazelle, for example, is going to be running the elections subcommittee, kind of like by Robert's rules. Seems a little formal to me, but I don't know. I wanted to hear how you feel about the necessity for formality. Are we gonna have to make motions and stuff? I don't know. What are your thoughts on this?
I would say one of the things I foresee being most challenging for this committee and potentially all of them is a format for reporting back to the big group. So, and maybe that fleshes out more so as we move through and kind of settle on bullets and more clear thought. So, if the formality brings like specific language that we then take back, I'm in favor of that.
Yeah.
For the sake of conversation, and this is super valuable to me, and I think some of our best time looking back at the 6 kind of proposed specific issue bullets that we started with. A couple of meetings where we do just this will, I think, help us settle on that. So I think the formality gets in the way of that especially with a small group like this. So that's my pitch.
Yep, that makes sense. Sharon, what are your thoughts on the need for structure versus formality, or how we blend those two?
Yeah, I would say if there's a reason why it's preferred to, for us 3 to use Robert's rules, if there's like, well, you really should because you refused, then I think we should, maybe ask Randy about that, or Kevin about that.
Sure.
Judging from this meeting, I don't think we need that, but I also want to send you my notes that I've taken, and if you think, okay, this is just too much, or we should be doing things in terms of motions and seconds, and kind of silly with 3 people, but we could still do it if that was preferred by just by process or.
Okay.
So anyway.
Yep.
I'll send you both of you my notes, so you could take a look. You could correct anything. You could add anything, and we'll see if it just seems too dense.
Sure.
I could take, because this is more like between notes and minutes. So rather than just saying,
absolutely,
so and so talked about this,
Absolutely. And I think for my 2 cents, I think we're going to want to listen to how others are thinking of tackling this. And I think we're also going to want to be guided by our own instincts in terms of, having agenda items and knowing that we need to come to some resolution on certain things as we move through different meetings, you know, and as we progress. So I think using our own best judgment as a subcommittee as we go along is probably going to be what works best for us. And as we think about, like you guys said, what we need to present to the commission, you know, from one point to the next will evolve in terms of the necessity for structure. So, okay. No, that's
Are we at 3 different islands? I just want to check. So Kyle, you're on San Juan? Oh, we represent all 3 islands. That's great. All 3 of the big islands.
Awesome. Excellent. Okay. And then
What do you think about?
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
Go ahead. What do you think about? Would it be good to start reaching out to some people of color that we know in the islands and inviting them to give us some feedback or participate, or is it a little premature? How do you feel?
Kyle, what do you think?
I don't think it's ever too early. I'll say that. I think, I guess, sitting here right now, I'm thinking that maybe the challenge for us is not going to be the what. I don't think so much that we want to do. It's going to be the how that gets back into the document, and or you know, is this does a lot of this? We're sitting here now. I'm thinking a lot of this ends up being sort of more my stuff anyway. Is more kind of preamble level. I don't know how you dictate some of this stuff other than, you know, create more attention and make that the job of more people in the county. Again, I'm not sure how you roll that out, but I feel sort of like I do want to hear from those folks. I'm not sure what the questions are at this point, and I you know, it's not that I have to offer them something like, you know, your testimony today is going to be, you know, somehow massaged into an initiative or not an initiative, but some kind of, you know, I don't have a sense of that yet. So I'd at least want to wait another meeting or two, maybe.
I think so. I think I'd agree with that. Yeah. I'm also thinking it would be helpful to, we know that there's a King County example of a charter review commission that has tackled this in a pretty informed way, given existing challenges. And so I think learning from some examples like that, in terms of there's that website, I can't remember what the acronym is, but it starts with an M, and it's a source of a lot of information for us as we need
MRSC.
it. Yeah, MRSN or something like that. Yeah, and we could reach out to them to ask. Apparently they're quite a good resource. Randy mentioned he even reaches out to them to get information. We could reach out to them to find out if there are some counties in the state that are home rule charter run, if they have delved into these issues a little bit, you know, recently, and do they have any examples that we could draw on other than King County? But I also think that reaching out quickly to some King County contact points to find out what research they may have done on this as well. But I think it would be helpful to get a bit of a feeling for what other counties have had similar experiences recently in terms of wanting to do something like this, and what have they explored, what have they come up with, and use that as a bit of a guide, because it would be nice to have thank you, mrsc.org. It'd be nice to get a sense of what do we think we might be looking for here, and have some further guidance in our minds on that first. So but then going to, the reason I suggest that is because if we want to invite people to come speak with us, they're going to want to know what we would want to have them speak about. They'd want to know what is our thinking at all. The other thing that it just came to my mind is we're going to be having these town halls in March on the 12th and the 13th. And I think we could do some of our own island outreach to some folks, you know, who we know represent those more minority or marginalized groups, and find ways, like I can do that through reaching out to our Lopez Island Family Resource Center and a couple of other people I know on the island, to say, we have a subcommittee of the commission or a committee of the commission that's discussing these justice and equity issues. And we would encourage, some participation on the part of people to those town halls to ask some questions about this and what the commissioners think about, doing some things that might better address issues of racial injustice and discrimination, et cetera. Anyway, I don't know if that makes sense, but that could be one way of approaching it as well.
Yeah, I think that's very good. Yeah, because it is, well, it's March 12th. We're
Yeah.
having the town hall. We're having 2 town halls,
12th and 13th.
March 12th and 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not too far. It's 3 weeks off,
But in advance of that, we could
or less, actually.
yeah, we could decide we want to invite, 1 or 2 people to come speak to us. And I offline can talk to a couple of contacts on Lopez, one of whom is decades of experience in this kind of work, and just brainstorm a little bit with her and come back to you guys with a couple suggestions of how we might formulate our thinking around this. If you'd like, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
Do you guys?
Yeah.
That sounds great to me, and I think there'll be some more of that between us, and I'm sure Kevin has some thoughts and connections also.
Yeah.
If we can reel them in. I'm gonna bet that if we sat for another hour, we could extend our list, the original list that was put together.
Yeah.
Does it make any sense for 2 minutes to go try and read through that? And all of you guys have that popped up?
Yep, I've got it right here. Yep.
Sure.
Let's do that.
So, number 1, creation of an independent citizens law and justice oversight committee. Kevin's thought. I think something like that is appropriate, and I like it. I think it's more reactionary, and it maybe is more of a seeds. I think of it as more of a seeds kind of thing. Maybe it identifies avenues over the next review cycle, the next 5 years, whatever they decide it to be, that may sort of inform the governance or the sort of the legislative kind of piece.
Yeah.
I don't know about that. Number 2 is the charter and the current structure of local government going to be able to serve our county effectively in terms of having respect for the equal and equitable rights of all, regardless of sex, gender, race, ethnicity, religion, socioeconomic class, ability, etc. I see that. Well, can you say more about that, Jane? I see that as a pretty deep dive.
Yeah, and I as I've listened to previous to our fellow commissioners talk in the last few meetings, I feel two things about this. One is that the preamble is something that I feel is well placed to be, at least at a higher level, speaking to our aspirations as a county and what the charter how the charter will serve us as people who live in this county. So that's a bit of that is kind of preamble, and I feel like I feel confident that the folks working on preamble are going to come up with that kind of some of those values, if you will. Then the other way I look at this statement I made now is, I think because of the conversation we've just had, I think about ways in which we might want to examine structurally what could become a placeholder in this charter, like you said, Kyle, either as maybe a new chapter or maybe as something that is built into the county's administration or somehow related to public interest, but finding a hook or 2 or 3 on which we can, just capture the essence of, the inclusive county we aspire to be, with a representative government in that regard that serves its people in that way. Does that make sense?
I think so. Does a Bill of Rights kind of approach, does that appeal to you, or?
It would. I just don't know what that would look like. And I've heard, the Julian Battaglia has talked to us about, this Bill of Rights and rights of nature concept. So, I mean, I actually know Julian, but so I'd like to, is it a Bill of Rights we're talking about? So I'd like to look into that a little bit more and explore if that's it. And is that too progressive for this county, right? Is that too I don't know. I don't know. It's something
Yeah.
I'd be prepared to read a little bit about, though.
I wonder, I haven't looked extensively through the King County materials. I wonder if there isn't something like that there or somewhere, or, sort of already thought through and put together.
So that's something
Nationwide.
I'd be prepared to do a little homework on. Okay.
Okay.
In addition to talking to my friend here who might also give us some insight into getting some more diverse views. Okay, go ahead, Kyle.
Okay. The next four were maybe pretty kind of sharpened, or pretty ground down. Deepen, number 3, deepen, broaden incorporation of Indigenous Native values, perspectives, problem solving, and county structure. Expand recruitment of and inclusion of regional Native individuals in government, elected, appointed office, and civil service. That's a pretty lofty goal. I'd like to, again, incentive is the wrong word. I don't know what else to come up with, but somehow make that work to make that more possible and more attractive, I guess, more than pick people to do that work, I guess. Number 5, entertain a development of a county level consular office or foreign, read as Canadian or tribal affairs position or office. Proactively, and number 6, proactively incentivize younger and multicultural populations into local government, elected, appointed decision-making positions. This, more than anything, this is something that I've said this already, I think, but I think success on that item would drive a lot of the other goals I have, just by nature of being less white and less old. Frankly,
this sounds a lot to me like affirmative action. Frankly, points number 3 or number 4 and number 6, in a way, it smacks of affirmative action in a sense. And I just kind of wonder what, again, what examples are there out there that could help us explore this and the feasibility of it.
I look at it. I'm not sure. I look at it as a where. I mean, if you have, of all the places to have to push a rock uphill, this seems like one of the easiest places to do it. We're small. We so clearly, in the budget preamble and some of our other places, we so clearly identify that things like this are among our values, and yet they're not reflected in the footprint and the org chart and all those other things. So that's the gap to fill. That's what I'm after.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I will commit before I have a question with this. I will commit before we meet again to look for maybe examples of where that's some of those things have been bitten off and included. And then the question is, by meeting today, are we committing to all Mondays 4 to 5? Is that working?
I can do that.
Does that work for you, Kyle?
At this point, it's as good as anything.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works for me. As things stand, I have to be on 2 other committees. So one is on Thursday and one is on Sunday. So this day works for me. Monday, Kevin said would work for him. That's why I went with the Monday time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tuesday
Well,
wasn't available.
I think maybe for Wednesdays, if there's a report, if there's a section, I haven't seen that agenda. If there's a section on reporting back, I think that at least that's our intention. And if other people wanted to join us and say, "Ooh, you struck a nerve, I want to be on that committee now."
Okay.
That I'm good to commit to that for the first Monday, the 1st. Is that right?
Okay. So yeah, so we've got shoot, where's my calendar? Oh, it's right here. Do you, just on that point, what do you all feel about what do you both feel about doing any kind of reporting back if there's time allowed on Wednesday? It strikes me it's not part of the agenda. So
I think it's too early. I mean, I could give any one of us, I think, could give a recap of the conversation, but kind of short on concise content, frankly.
For sure. I think
expected.
Yeah. I think it's great that we've got Sharon taking some notes, and then we can kind of we can reflect on what she captured, and even have a little bit of an email back and forth about it, you know, and if anything, it's a record of some of our discussion, and then and it might help us shape an agenda for our next meeting on Monday.
What I would like to see, and I'm curious about your feedback, both of your feedback. I don't know what the intention is, but I would value both any video recording, so our recording, and any notes to go into the files part of Teams. So if you
Okay.
have, if something piques your interest, or you do want to check up on, you know, somebody else on our work, or refer back to notes, that there's a really easy place to find that. And I know not everybody is totally up on 365 Teams, but you know, scrolling through old emails is going to be more challenging as that fills in.
Yeah,
Yep, that's very true.
it's already challenging.
Oh, I know. I feel the same way. I really do. No, that's a good point. So I've been into Microsoft Teams once or twice since we formed and got into it. I wonder, can we create, are they going to create, maybe Catherine or Olivia going to create sort of subfolders for each of the committees, or in which we can populate, you know, recordings of our meetings and notes?
Yeah, good question. Any one of us can do that, and I could happily show you both at any time. I'm happy to do that for the group and be that sort of document steward. It is, once you've done it a time or two, it's fairly straightforward, and it's easy to go, you know, at your leisure and find. But it would make sense if it were well labeled inside.
For sure.
That space will start to branch out and outline.
For sure. So
Okay.
Sharon, have you gone into Microsoft Teams, that document sort of repository yet?
I don't know if I did that or not. If I did, it would have been right at the beginning of this, but I haven't been. How do we access that again?
Yeah, go ahead, Kyle.
I was just gonna say, can you give me screen sharing?
Oh, yep.
And I think I can help. I think I can show it to you now.
Okay.
The only thing I've been going into regularly is the Outlook email.
You should be able to share now. I've checked multiple participants can share simultaneously, so you should have the option to share now, Kyle.
Okay, let me see where unfortunately I have 3 accounts with Teams, and so let me see if I can.
You
need to know which team you're on.
That I know.
Hey Sharon, just for reference, we received early on, like it was one of the first emails you would have received, I think, on your CRC account. What is it? Like a welcome to Teams, Microsoft Teams email from the county.
It does sound familiar. Yeah. I can go back and
it would
and check,
be
get,
like
get
one of the first messages you got in your inbox, and that's how I found it. It was a welcome.
I might have even downloaded something.
And it came.
I'm sorry.
I can do a quick look and see if I can find it, and I could share.
I'll look too. I've got my.
It says Microsoft Teams. You have been added. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, you've been added to a. I'll forward it to you, and you'll see it. Okay, so Kyle, are you?
So.
Oh, I see it. It's like the first thing. Yeah, you've been added. Yeah, I see that.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think for most, well, I don't know about most, oftentimes just getting into the Teams page is the most challenging part. So over in the margin of your opener where you have Outlook and all the other 365 resources, the Teams icon is one of those. So when you open it up, I have 2. Because I have other county business, I have 2. So if I open charter review in general and I come over here to files, I think you can probably see my cursor, hopefully.
Yep.
And then this sub menu here across includes, so if you look through, there's all kinds of stuff already. If you haven't looked already, the Earth Charter. If you want to upload something, you can make a new folder. And of course, name it much like you would in your on your desktop, and then upload files. As long as it's on your computer somewhere and you can go find it, then you can upload there, and it populates here. So
excellent.
So we could, I
Okay.
mean, we could even make one now, but so long as you can get into the Teams part, yeah, you can navigate to that
I'm just wondering,
file stuff.
yeah, I'm just wondering, Kyle, we could create it ourselves now, or maybe we should wait, or if you would like to send an email to Olivia and Catherine and say, we're realizing we would like to be able to upload into Microsoft Teams our recording of our committee meetings and our notes. So do you want to do that in a manner that it's centralized for everybody? So there's, whether they want to have a centralized folder with subfolders of all the committees, or I don't know, what do you think?
I'm happy to do that with Catherine
Okay.
right now, and I think that I'm not sure. Has anyone else, have either of you met with any other committee yet?
No.
I wonder if
No,
not one
not yet.
first. So I'll bring that up with her right now. I may have missed the close of business, but I'll send her an email about that and suggest separate folders in the files section
Okay,
for the
excellent.
subcommittee work.
I think we are the first committee. I think that the next one is this evening, if I'm not mistaken. I think Liz Lafferty was going to be in one this evening. Yeah.
Okay.
So we were first. Okay.
Yeah, I can see already that I actually do have Microsoft Teams in my applications. Just have to go see if I can find my sign-in info.
I'm trying to unshare my screen. There we go. Stop share. Went over there.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Yeah, that was a reminder because I haven't been in there for a little while. Okay. So just should we show, are you good with wrapping up now? We're a bit past our end time. So
Yeah, this is good.
okay, I'm just, in terms of sort of any further background reading or next steps vis-a-vis what we've kind of committed to doing between now, we're going to meet again next Monday, I take it.
Mm-hmm.
My sense is we probably all want to just dive a little bit into that King County, those King County links to the Charter Review Commission's work
Yes.
there. And then I think I committed to looking a little bit into a Bill of Rights kind of arrangement that another county, perhaps in the state or in the country, may have come up with. I think the one that Julianne Battaglia was referring to relates more to the rights of nature. Nevertheless, that suggests that there's probably something related more to,
Yeah, because we're talking about underrepresented groups, and that includes people of color. It includes
exactly. Yeah.
the natural world around us. Also, by the way, I don't know if we mentioned people with disabilities. That's another.
Yeah. And that was in my big sort of statement, that motherhood, that
In
motherhood.
my statement.
Yeah. Was it in yours as well, Kyle?
Not specifically, no.
Okay. Yeah. I indicated ability. Yeah. Cause that's absolutely important as well. Okay. So I was going to do a little bit of homework on that. And I could dip into the, that website and see what I could find as well. And I also committed to reaching out to one or two folks here on Lopez to have some conversation about when we're ready to bring some folks into conversation with us. What's the best way of going about that? So those are two things I've kind of committed to delving into. Kyle, I think you said you were going to, there was something you were going to be able to do as well for us.
At the least, well, do the mechanics of the file sharing, and I'm writing to Catherine right now.
Excellent.
And then the specific on my specific bullets for topic material to go and research if anyone else has addressed those, and whether they go. And to answer your kind of agenda point, where in the document does that go? Is it Bill of Rights? Is it, are there broad strokes across all of the language? Is it both? Is it something else? So.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Sharon, were there any things that you feel like you'd like to delve into between now and our next meeting?
Well, I definitely want to look at the King County links. I want to spend more time with the King County Charter, which I've been going through a little bit here, a little bit there.
Okay, excellent.
And I would like to reach out to a couple of friends here on Orcas too.
Excellent. Good. Okay. That sounds really good. And that's probably as much as we want to try and tackle between now and next Monday for now, anyway.
Okay, and we can stay in touch during the week. Anything anybody
Absolutely.
comes up
Absolutely.
with that you want to share before the next meeting, we can do that on the email.
Yeah.
Pigeons?
Yeah.
We send pigeons?
Exactly. And I think we can expect Kevin will want to follow along with us as best he can, as much as he has time. That's certainly my impression, that he cares about what this group does. So, so we'll just keep him in the loop and yeah.
And the first thing I'm going to do is send you guys my notes so you can take a look at those.
Fantastic. And were there any other commissioners you felt we should really reach out to? Or I mean, I'm fine just proceeding as us, but I just wanted to ask what you thought.
I appreciate Olivia's energy, and I feel really wanted some younger some people with kids that were in current
she also has
programs.
she also has Native American heritage.
Olivia does.
Yeah, because her dad does. Yeah.
I can't. She's certainly entitled to sit where she wants to sit, but I'd love to have that. She did express interest in some of my proposals earlier, and I have not gotten back to her. Partly actually waiting for this conversation. So I'm happy. I will. You can add that to I'll reach out to her and see if she has any interest, even just to come in for one meeting and maybe contribute or say a little something or.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, if she doesn't have the bandwidth, that maybe that she wants to, maybe once we've had a couple of meetings and she wants to maybe hear what we're up to and.
Are you okay if I reach out on our behalf, committee's behalf to her?
I'm fine with that. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll talk to her or reach out right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if she's feeling overwhelmed, like she's got too much to do with the committee she's already committed to and her job and family and whatever, she can just toss things at us and we can process them. So
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think that goes with with other commissioners if they have inputs that they want to provide.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, I think that was a good first meeting, you guys. And Kyle, I in terms of how we share this, I don't want to make it, I don't want to overcomplicate it, right? I mean, and so in terms of setting agendas and sort of just chairing the meeting or what have you, how do you want to do that? Do you want to go back and forth, or do you want, I don't know, what do you think about it?
I don't know. I felt like you put a lot of stuff together, just writing some notes. I appreciate that. That's time consuming, and you had to search for me through the ether, which can't be very fun.
That's okay.
I don't really know. I think because we're a small group, I think the meeting, at least for the first few, will be I felt like today was sort of self-tending.
Yeah.
I'm happy to sort of alternate weeks with you to put the sort of the topic or the bullets together ahead of time. I'm so grateful to you, Sharon, for taking notes. That's I'm not good at that, or I'm inconsistent at least. So I think we have that covered. If I know ahead of time, especially a week out, that I can't be here, I'll certainly share that early. So
sure, yeah. I mean, do you feel like you want to set the agenda and chair for the next one, or I'm
Sure.
happy to, are you okay with that? And then we'll just
that's fine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And if that's not tenable for you at some point, you can let me know. I think for me, I can manage it, but sharing would be great.
Let's
see how it goes. We can try it that way.
Okay.
And then Sharon can tell us which one she likes better.
Yeah,
Maybe
always
she'll
glad to
fire,
share my.
maybe she'll fire us both.
No, because then I got to take the job on myself.
Yeah, right. Okay, guys, this has been great. It's been really good to get to know you a bit better and get a sense of your aspirations for this work.
Likewise, likewise. Thanks so much.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we'll see you
Okay.
on Wednesday anyway.
See you Wednesday. Very
Okay.
good.
All right. Thanks very much,
Thanks,
then.
everybody.
Okay, bye-bye.
Have a good night.
You too.